The Galactic Council's emergency session began exactly as High Counselor VC Thury expected, with absolute chaos and the lingering smell of what humans called coffee wafting through the chamber. Someone had apparently smuggled the contraband substance in, and half the delegates were already twitching. Order. I demand order. VC Thury's crystalline appendages clinked against the ceremonial gong, a sound that usually commanded respect. Today it barely registered over the cacophony of various species arguing about the latest incident at the Sol System's border. 3 ships. 3 of our finest survey vessels. Gone. The Meridian delegates' bioluminescent patches flashed in agitation, just because they crossed some arbitrary line drawn by primitive apes. Ambassador Zix Tar of the Kravenite Empire lounged in his hover seat, all 6 eyes rolling simultaneously, a feat that had taken years to perfect. Oh, please. He drawled, mandibles clicking in amusement. Are we really still pretending these humans are a threat? They haven't even colonized their entire solar system yet. VC Thury's crystalline structure shifted to a warning shade of deep purple. Need I remind the Honorable Ambassador that this is the 47th emergency session this cycle about Earth-related incidents. The warning beacons are there for a reason. The chamber's holoprojector flickered to life, displaying the impressive array of warning buoys surrounding the Sol system. They ranged from simple danger, do not approach messages in 2,847 languages to more elaborate ones, featuring detailed holocasts of previous encounters. VC Thury's personal favorite was the one that just screamed nope in pulsing red letters, reportedly installed by the Arxos civilization shortly before their mysterious disappearance. Speaking of disappearances, VC Thury continued, pulling up a holographic list that scrolled on for an uncomfortably long time. Would anyone care to explain what happened to the Krell battle fleet? Or the Jean TC research armada? Or that one Valaxian wedding party that took a wrong turn at Alpha Centauri? Coincidences? Zix Tar waved a dismissive appendage. Besides, the Valaxians were asking for it. Who plans a destination wedding in a restricted sector? An ancient delegate from the Silicon consciousness stirred from their power-saving mode. Query: has anyone actually observed these humans in combat? The chamber fell silent. After several uncomfortable moments, a small, rarely noticed delegate from the archival cast spoke up. The PX Elki surveillance network observed one of their conflicts approximately 70 Earth years ago. The footage was sealed under Gamma-level quarantine protocols. The only surviving note reads they fight everything, even themselves, and they're getting better at it. Zix Tar scoffed, but VC Thury noticed his upper right eye twitching. Ridiculous. Next you'll tell me their primitive projectile weapons are actually effective against modern shields. The archival delegate's color shifted to what their species used for grimace. Funny you should mention that. The Krell battle fleet's last transmission was just hysterical laughter followed by the words they found a way through. How did they? Who gave them coffee? VC Thury sighed, already drafting their 48th emergency session notice in their mind. Some species just had to learn the hard way. At least the insurance premiums for this sector couldn't get any higher. They were wrong about that last part, of course. So very, very wrong. Ambassador Zix Tar's report to the Kravenite High Command was a masterpiece of selective editing. Words like caution severe losses and just don't were mysteriously absent from the final version. Instead, phrases like primitive backwater easy conquest and think of the parking space featured prominently. Which is how Admiral Q Lax found himself commanding the diplomatic survey fleet translation invasion force of 30 ships at the edge of the Sol system, wondering why someone had welded a giant seriously Don T-signed to a derelict Krell dreadnought. Sir, his sensor officer reported, we're detecting unusual activity from their 4th planet. Mars? The red dustball Q Lax chittered dismissively, probably more primitive rovers taking soil samples. No, sir. It's the officer paused, recalibrating his instruments. It appears to be, laughing at us. Meanwhile, aboard the EDF Prometheus, Commander Rael Phoenix was having the time of her life. Are they seriously approaching in a standard Corvus attack formation? That's adorable. She took another sip from her "Don't talk to me until I've conquered a planet" mug, a gift from last year's office party. Mom, Lieutenant Rodriguez called out, barely containing her grin. Should we activate the Dave system? Phoenix considered it. Dave deliberately annoying visitor ejection had been Earth's first line of defense ever since humanity realized that advanced alien civilizations had never developed resistance to cat videos and pop music from the early 21st century. Not yet. Let's try diplomacy first. For laughs. The Kravenite diplomatic transmission came right on schedule. Admiral Kulax's hologram materialized on the bridge, all six eyes trying to look simultaneously menacing. Primitive humans. We come bearing the gift of civilization. Submit to our benevolent rule, or... Yeah, quick question, Phoenix interrupted, casually filing her nails. Did you guys even read the warning beacons? Or the Yelp reviews? We're rated 1 star for invasions. Would not attempt conquest again. Customer service literally killed us all. Kulax's mandibles twitched in confusion. This wasn't how conquest speeches usually went. You dare mock the mighty Kravenite Empire? Our technology is centuries beyond your... Old that thought. Phoenix turned to her crew. Did anyone bring popcorn? This is usually the part where they brag about their shields right before. Yep, there it goes. A series of small objects had detached from Mars' surface. The Kravenite fleet's advanced sensors classified them as harmless debris right until they started accelerating at physically improbable speeds. Impossible, Kuliak shrieked as 3 of his ships suddenly sprouted what appeared to be harpoons. Their weapons are literally pointy sticks with rockets. Technically, Phoenix corrected, they're magnetically accelerated tungsten rods with really good aim and an attitude problem. We call them can openers. Earth's defense grid activated next. To the Kravenite's advanced sensors, it looked like a chaotic mess of outdated satellites, space junk, and were those disco balls? Status report Kulax demanded as his ship's systems began acting strangely. One cruiser was broadcasting nothing but something called "Never Gonna Give You Up" on all frequencies. Another had its artificial gravity reversed. 2 more were engaged in what appeared to be an unauthorized dance-off. Sir, his increasingly panicked sensor officer reported, they're not using any technology we recognize. It's like they looked at standard combat protocols and decided to do literally anything else. Phoenix watched the chaos unfold with professional satisfaction. You know what the really funny part is? This is just our automated response. We haven't even started trying yet. The Kravenite fleet attempted to regroup, only to discover that Earth's moon had somehow acquired a smiley face drawn in what appeared to be expired parking tickets. Their tactical AI was having an existential crisis trying to determine if this counted as psychological warfare or performance art. Last Chance Phoenix offered cheerfully, "You can leave now, and we'll only upload the highlights to Galactube. The compilation video of first contact attempts is getting a bit long anyway." Never, Kulax declared, though his voice had risen several octaves. The Kravenite Empire does not retreat from. What is that noise? A familiar bass line began playing across all frequencies. Phoenix's crew started bobbing their heads in unison. You activated Dave. Didn't you, Phoenix asked Rodriguez, who was already dancing. Another one bites. The dust echoed through space as Earth's true defense platforms emerged from their hiding spots in the asteroid belt. They weren't the sleek, advanced weapons the Kravenites expected. Instead, they looked like someone had asked a child to draw a space station, then built it anyway because it actually worked better than the proper designs. Their whole defense doctrine is just wrong, Kulax's tactical officer wailed. They're violating at least 73 laws of combat strategy and physics, mainly physics. Phoenix finished her coffee and stood up. Welcome to Earth, where we learned all our space combat techniques from movies that got the science wrong, and it turns out the universe was too confused to stop us. Now about that retreat option. The Kravenite fleet's formation was already breaking, several ships literally flying sideways in their haste to escape. Their sensors had finally figured out what Earth's defensive platforms were doing, and the results had caused 3 different AIs to request early retirement. Humanity, it seemed, had looked at the standard rules of space combat and decided they were more like guidelines anyway. Admiral Kulax's retreat was met with exactly the response you'd expect from an empire that considered backing down a capital offense. They sent an even bigger fleet. The Kravenite armada emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of angry mechanical wasps who'd just discovered their nest had been used for target practice. Now witness the true might of the Kravenite Empire, Grand Admiral Thax announced to Earth's defenders, his hologram somehow managing to look both smug and nervous simultaneously. We have assembled 1,000 of our finest warships. Commander Phoenix, who had been in the middle of her weekly poker game with the Mars Defense Coalition, didn't even look up from her cards. Hey Rodriguez, what's the record for most ships lost in a single invasion attempt? The Jean TC holds the current record at 1,003 ships. Hear that? Phoenix grinned at Thax's hologram. You're going to need at least 4 more ships to make the leaderboard. What followed was, according to Earth's historical records, technically a battle, but mostly just hilarious. The Kravenite invasion started textbook perfect ships in formation, weapons charged, electronic warfare suites ready to disable Earth's primitive systems. Their fatal mistake was assuming Earth had any systems simple enough to disable. Sir, a Kravenite tactical officer reported their communication networks are completely analog. They're using something called ham radio and Morse code. Our cyber warfare suite is being mocked by elderly humans calling themselves radio enthusiasts. Meanwhile, Dr. Jasper Mad Dog Blackwood was having the time of his life in his lunar laboratory. Initialize Project Pandora, he cackled, causing several of his assistants to edge toward the exits. Let's show them why humans aren't allowed at most galactic science fairs. Project Pandora wasn't a weapon, not technically. It was what happened when humanity's brightest minds asked themselves, what if we took every bad sci-fi concept that shouldn't work and made them work anyway? The first sign that something was wrong came when the Kravenite fleet's artificial gravity started hiccuping. Minor technical difficulties, K-Thax assured his commanders, right before a third of his fleet suddenly found itself operating under cartoon physics. What's happening? K-Thax demanded as he watched one of his dreadnoughts spin like a pinwheel. They've weaponized bad science, his chief physicist wailed. Their technology isn't primitive, it's wrong. They're using engineering principles that were specifically excluded from our training because they're impossible. Dr. Blackwood's voice crackled over all frequencies, sounding entirely too pleased with himself. Fun fact, if you don't know something's impossible, and you do it anyway, the universe sometimes gets confused and just goes with it. The Kravenite fleet's attempts to maintain formation were hampered by the fact that Earth's defenders seemed to have no concept of formation in the first place. Civilian ships darted between capital ships, broadcasting nothing but laugh tracks. Orbital platforms that appeared to be held together with duct tape and optimism were somehow absorbing direct hits from planet-killer weapons. How are they doing this? K-Thax roared as another squadron reported critical system failures caused by something called interpretive dance warfare. Commander Phoenix's voice came over the comm, somehow managing to sound both professional and thoroughly amused. Here's the thing about humans we've spent our entire history fighting. Each other, nature, common sense. We've gotten really good at it, but more importantly, we've gotten really creative at it. As if to demonstrate her point, a group of human ships began executing maneuvers that made several Kravenite navigation computers file for divorce. They were flying in formations based on ancient Earth concepts like boxing the compass and the old razzle-dazzle. Status report, K-Thax demanded. Sir, the humans seem to be using everything. Their fighters are quoting ancient Earth movies while performing physically impossible maneuvers. Their capital ships are playing something called Marco Polo with our targeting systems. And someone keeps sending our fleet pictures of their pet cats, with poorly spelled captions. The Kravenite military doctrine, refined over centuries of galactic warfare, had no protocol for dealing with an enemy that treated space combat like a particularly enthusiastic party game. Then Project Pandora's second phase activated. Initiating the what-if protocols, Dr. Blackwood announced with the glee of a mad scientist who'd just discovered his death ray actually made really good toast. Starting with what if we could convince physics to take a coffee break, spatial anomalies began appearing throughout the battlefield. Some ships found themselves suddenly flying through what appeared to be strawberry pudding. Others reported that space had temporarily turned plaid. This defies all known laws of physics, the Kravenite science officer screamed. Bold of you to assume we ask physics for permission, Phoenix replied. We find it's easier to apologize afterward. The guerrilla warfare tactics employed by Earth's defenders weren't just unconventional, they were deliberately nonsensical. Ships would appear from nowhere, throw rubber ducks at Kravenite sensors, and disappear while playing Calliope music. Ground bases on Mars were conducting warfare through interpretive dance, somehow causing critical systems failures through the power of synchronized movement. They're not even trying to make sense anymore, K-Thax's tactical officer sobbed as another squadron was disabled by what appeared to be weaponized dad jokes. Well, that's just the Chaos Division, Phoenix explained cheerfully. There are special forces. Their motto is if we don't know what we're doing, the enemy certainly won't. The coup de grace came when Earth activated what they called the remember those movies everyone said were unrealistic protocol. Ships started performing maneuvers based on every sci-fi film that had ever made actual physicists cry. They're using the Kessel Run maneuver, a Kravenite navigator shrieked. That's not even from their actual history, K-Thax protested. That's from a movie. Bold of you to assume we know the difference, Phoenix replied. Half our actual history sounds made up anyway. as the Kravenite fleet descended into chaos, Doctor. Blackwood's voice came over the comms one last time, remember. The best part about Project Pandora isn't what it does, it's that none of you will ever know if what you're seeing is the weapon, a malfunction, or just humans being humans. Sleep tight. Kathax looked at his fleet, what was left of it, and made a decision that would later be recorded in Kravenite military histories as the smartest thing anyone did that day. He ran. The Galactic Council's emergency archives contain exactly one file labeled "Why We Don't Mess with Humans." It's written in red ink, sealed with warning symbols from 17 different civilizations, and somehow manages to radiate smugness. Kathax was about to find out why. Sir, his last remaining tactical officer reported, mandibles quivering, Earth's defensive grid is changing. The seemingly random collection of jury-rigged satellites and improbable defense platforms was shifting. Gone were the disco balls and rubber ducks. Gone were the meme broadcasting stations and the orbital platforms that played early 2000s pop music. In their place, something far more terrifying emerged. Every piece of apparent space junk, every primitive satellite, every silly-looking defense station transformed. Like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon if butterflies were heavily armed and harbored a deep-seated desire to prove a point. Oh, Commander Phoenix's voice carried the weight of centuries of human warfare turned into an art form. Did you think that was our actual defense grid? That was just to keep us entertained while we waited to see if you'd be smart enough to leave. The transformation was beautiful in its horror. Orbital platforms unfurled like deadly flowers, revealing weapon systems that shouldn't exist. Satellites shed their cheap exteriors, exposing sleek, predatory forms beneath. Even the moon seemed to smile differently now, less comedy club, more apex predator. Impossible, Kathax stammered. Our intelligence indicated. Your intelligence indicated exactly what we wanted it to, Phoenix interrupted. Here's a fun fact about humans: we're not just predators, we're ambush predators. Everything you've seen until now, that was us playing with our food. Dr. Blackwood's cackling filled the command channel. Did you really think a species that survived its own nuclear age, mastered fusion power, and invented both pizza and competitive cheese rolling would be stuck using primitive technology? We choose to use duct tape and impossible physics because it's funny. That's when the coffee incident began. It started small, just a few human ships breaking formation to grab a quick coffee. The Kravenites, still reeling from the revelation of Earth's true capabilities, barely noticed. They should have. Ma M. Rodriguez reported, fighting to keep a straight face. Operation Caffeine Chaos is go. All personnel are properly coffeed up. Phoenix's grin would have made a shark file for emotional damages. You know what humanity's greatest achievement is? Not space travel, not nuclear fusion, not even pizza. It's the fact that we figured out how to weaponize our own sleep deprivation. The human fleet, now operating on what they cheerfully termed maximum coffee, began moving in ways that made the universe itself do a double take. Sir, a Kravenite sensor operator screamed. Their pilots' reaction times are exceeding our predictive algorithms. And they're giggling. Phoenix's voice carried the distinctive tone of someone who had achieved perfect caffeine-to-blood ratio. Fun fact, humans on coffee don't just ignore the impossible, we actively dare it to try and stop us. The battle that followed would later be described in galactic military texts as absolute shenanigans with extreme prejudice. Human ships moved like caffeinated wildcats, pulling maneuvers that made physics write a strongly worded letter of resignation. Their targeting computers, instead of following standard combat algorithms, seemed to operate on what they called coffee-induced intuition. How are they calculating these trajectories? Kathax demanded. That's our secret, Phoenix replied. The sound of slurping coffee clearly audible. We're not calculating anything. We're just doing what feels right and letting physics catch up on its own time. The true horror of humanity's military capability wasn't in their advanced technology, though. That was terrifying enough. It was in how they used it. Every primitive solution they demonstrated earlier had a devastating counterpart. The rubber ducks. Turned out they were scanning the Kravenite fleet's structural weaknesses. The dad jokes? Encoded battle plans. Even the cats with poorly spelled captions were actually a sophisticated targeting system. Sir, a Kravenite officer reported, voice trembling, I think I understand why the warning beacons exist. The humans, they're not just dangerous because they're strong. They're dangerous because they make the impossible look easy, and they do it while laughing. Dr. Blackwood's voice cut through the chaos again. Remember how we said Project Pandora wasn't a weapon? We lied, sort of. It's actually a demonstration of what happens when you give humans coffee, advanced technology, and a reason to get creative. The Kravenite fleet's formation, what was left of it, shattered as Earth's true military might was revealed. Ships that had seemed like junk now moved with predatory grace. Defense platforms that had appeared primitive now wielded weapons that somehow merged the impossible with the inevitable. Look at it this way: Phoenix offered as another Kravenite squadron fell to what appeared to be weaponized probability manipulation. At least you'll have an interesting story to tell. Assuming you survive, of course. Cathax watched in horror as his mighty armada was systematically dismantled by a species that treated warfare like a particularly entertaining hobby. Every tactic they dismissed as primitive or nonsensical revealed itself to be part of a larger, devastatingly efficient strategy. But why, he finally managed to ask. Why pretend to be less advanced? Phoenix's answer chilled him to his core, because it's more fun this way. Also, do you have any idea how much paperwork is involved in revealing our actual technology level? This way, we get to play with our food and keep our tech classification listed as probably harmless in most galactic databases. The final stroke came when Earth's fleet, now operating at peak caffeine efficiency, executed what they called the hold my coffee and watch this maneuver. It involved principles of physics that wouldn't be discovered by other races for centuries, performed with the casual ease of someone parallel parking. That's impossible, Cathax's science officer wailed. They're using theoretical physics we haven't even theorized yet. Theoretical, Dr. Blackwood laughed. We moved past theory when someone bet us we couldn't do it. Never bet against caffeinated humans with something to prove. As the last of his fleet retreated, or more accurately, fled in blind panic, Cathax finally understood. The warnings weren't to protect humanity from the galaxy. They were to protect the galaxy from humanity, a species that had looked at the laws of physics, declared them more like guidelines, really, and proceeded to do whatever they wanted anyway. And they did it all while treating cosmic horror as a spectator sport. Don't forget to leave a review on Galactube, Phoenix called after the retreating ships. We're trying to maintain our 1-star rating. It keeps things interesting. The Galactic Council's 49th emergency session began with something unprecedented: absolute silence. The kind of silence that suggests everyone is simultaneously trying not to make eye contact with anyone else. Ambassador Zix Tar was conspicuously absent, though rumors suggested he'd taken up a new career as a hermit on a distant moon, leaving behind only a note that read, "I quit everything forever." High Counselor VC Thuri surveyed the chamber, their crystalline structure now sporting a new crack from what they termed stress-induced crystallization. Before them lay the Kravenite after-action report, which consisted primarily of increasingly panicked exclamation marks and coffee stains. Well, VC Thuri finally said, I believe we can skip the "I told you so" portion of today's agenda. The chamber's holoprojector displayed the new warning beacons being installed around Sol's system. The Kravenites had been thorough. Each beacon now featured a variety of messages ranging from "absolutely not" to "seriously, we mean it this time," to one that just displayed a loop of their fleet's retreat accompanied by circus music. The Classification Committee has submitted their updated report on humanity, VC Thuri continued, trying not to wince at the contents. They've created an entirely new category. Earth is now classified as approach at own peril. No, really, we have video evidence. A small delegation from the insurance consortium shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their preliminary assessment of the damage had caused 3 different accounting IIs to request therapy. Additionally, VC Thuri added, humanity has submitted their first formal communication to the Council. It's a bill for littering. Apparently abandoned warships count as space debris, and they're charging by the piece. The Meridian delegate's bioluminescent patches flickered in distress. But they destroyed those ships. They've included itemized receipts. A nervous ripple passed through the chamber. Several species simultaneously decided that today would be an excellent day to update their places we don't talk about lists. There's more, VC Thuri continued, their crystalline structure tinged with what might have been amusement. They're offering consulting services. Consulting? On what? According to this, and I quote, how to not get your entire fleet turned into an impromptu art installation by a bunch of coffee-powered primates who treat physics like a suggestion. They're offering group rates. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. The Silicon Consciousness representative had to be rebooted after attempting to process the implications. Speaking of implications, VC Thuri added, our xenoanthropologists have submitted their analysis of human entertainment media. It appears that what we thought were fictional dramatizations were actually historical documentaries, including the ones about giant robots, and something called anime. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of several species simultaneously updating their threat assessment protocols. And that, dear readers, is how humanity became the galaxy's boogeyman. The species that other species tell scary stories about. Eat your nutritional paste parent units tell their spawn clusters, or the humans will show up and explain their concept of extreme sports to you. The Galactic Council now maintains a special archive of human achievements labeled things that shouldn't work but do anyway. Because humans don't know better, it's kept next to the ideas so bad they loop back around to brilliant file. And the what do you mean they did that for fun? Database. Earth, for its part, has embraced its new role with characteristic enthusiasm. They've started offering guided tours of their defense systems, now conveniently disguised as modern art installations, though the liability waiver is longer than most species' constitutions. Commander Phoenix was last seen installing a new coffee maker on the bridge of the Prometheus, this one with a label reading in case of invasion. Break glass. Dr. Blackwood's lunar laboratory now sports a days since last physics violation sign that perpetually reads 0. And me? Well, let's just say that being an insurance adjuster for the galactic underwriters of anomalous risk has gotten a lot more interesting since Earth joined the galactic community. Do you have any idea how hard it is to write a policy that covers damage by weaponized impossibility? Or how to calculate premiums for ships entering what humans call the fun zone? I've had to create entirely new categories of claims. My personal favorite is destruction by human ingenuity, which now has 17 subcategories, including they didn't know that was impossible, and hold my coffee and watch this. The warning beacons remain, of course, but they've evolved. The latest models include a variety of helpful features, like a countdown timer showing how long it's been since the last invasion attempt, a scoreboard of failed conquests, and a suggestion box for creative retreat strategies. They've also added a new message, written in every known language and a few that haven't been invented yet. Warning: this species turned coffee into a weapon, physics into a suggestion, and improbability into an art form. They don't know they can't do the things they do, so they just do them anyway. Their solution to meeting advanced alien civilizations was to pretend to be primitive until it was funny not to be. Their response to finding out they weren't alone in the universe was to start taking notes on new ways to be weird at people. P.S. Yes, they really did all that stuff in their entertainment videos. No, we don't know how. P.P.S. Don't ask about the rubber ducks. Trust us on this one. P.P.P.S. Current invasion attempt survival rate 0%. But they'll film it and add funny music. Signed, your friendly neighborhood insurance adjuster. Currently accepting new clients. Premium rates available for species with common sense. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to process a claim for emotional damages due to exposure to human dad jokes during combat. Sometimes I wonder if I should have gone into something less stressful, like professional sun diving or quantum origami. At least the coffee's good.